Hope you all are ready and raring for the week, getting going. Um, a friend reached out to me over the weekend and was asking about something that was difficult. And so I thought I would talk a little bit about it today. Apologies for my hair being a bit everywhere, but that's life on Monday. Hey, Armand. Um, and she was asking me about grief, about how to deal with grief and suicide. So, a cousin of hers had committed suicide, and they were dealing with that and having to, um, deal with the funeral and all of that. And um, so, I thought I would just kind of share some of my thoughts on it because she'd asked me. I have had to face that possibility. I mean, I think like most of us, I've lost people. I lost my grandfather, who I was very close to, on my mother's side, not on my father's side, who I didn't really know. And that, oftentimes that kind of loss we carry it with us, and sometimes we cry. I've lost friends. Sometimes, the emotion happens right away, and sometimes it's just kind of so big that it doesn't hit us um, until a long time later. Sometimes the shock of it is so big it doesn't really hit us until months or even a year later. And she was asking about grief and how we deal with grief. And I mean, I think suicide is a very specific kind of grief too, because oftentimes we the people left behind wonder or feel like, was there something I should have done? Was there any way I could have helped? And, perhaps, I don't know, perhaps they feel even betrayed by the person's actions that caused them this pain. And so I think it's definitely very different and more difficult than perhaps just a natural death of old age. Um, I mean, I'm not a specialist in this, and I definitely think it's good to talk to a grief counselor or someone, but I can share a few things that I understand or have learned about grief. And I think one of the most important things is to allow yourself to feel it, to give yourself time to grieve, not to, you know, overschedule yourself. But we all have different mechanisms for dealing with grief, and it's okay, you know. But allowing yourself uh, to feel the emotions, allowing them to come up, knowing you're not going to get lost in them, you don't have to get um, buried in them, right? But allow them to come out, allow yourself to really cry. And then also um, to be grateful for that person's life, right? This is dealing with any kind of difficult things, to have gratitude, to be grateful for their life and for who they were. With suicide in particular, or with losing someone close to you at a young age, I've had to face this. I've had to face the very real possibility of it in my own life with some of my siblings who were going through that. And thank goodness they didn't uh, commit suicide in the end. And I'm very grateful for that. But I did have to face that possibility. And um, I think one of the important things, like to me, that helped me to understand it or to deal with it is, and for other people who are thinking about it themselves, I guess, is, that recognition that when we feel that way, when we feel like all is lost, when we feel so empty and depressed and we can't see a future that we want for ourselves, when it feels like the pain is just too great, right? And it just seems to go on and on. That's oftentimes when people choose that path. They choose to opt out. And um, I guess for me, not everybody's going to agree with me on this, but I think that if when somebody chooses that, that's their choice, right? I think it's a very sad choice, because in my experience and from people I've talked to who have made it through from that, who have gone through that dark period and have entertained thoughts of suicide, sometimes for long periods of time, for a year or two, um, they made it through. And when they made it through, they were very grateful that they didn't make that choice. They didn't do that, right? Because now they have a good life, right? I think oftentimes that period is when you're going through that dark time of the soul. It happens to so many of us, and maybe, a lot of people don't talk about it that much, but it happens. I have a lot of friends who have been through that, and who now do work to try to help other people, which I think is phenomenal. And I think if you're experiencing that or suffering that, it's good to, you definitely should reach out to somebody who is working with people who think about that, who can tell you who've been there themselves, right? Who have gone through that period and have come out the other end, because they can show you that there is light at the end of that tunnel. That even though your emotions and the way you feel, right? What your mind is telling you is that there's no hope and there's no future and there's nothing out there for you and that all is lost, but that's not true, right? So often our mind gets blinders on it, right? It gets stuck in one thing and just keeps circling around that one thing, and it's that's an issue, because it's like our mind is stuck in a groove, right? Like, they have a groove on one of those old fashioned turntables, right? When it got cut a groove in it, would just get stuck in, right? Our brain can do that, our mind can do that, our body chemistry can do that to us. And so understanding I'm not my mind, understanding I'm not my brain, understanding that is so important. Understanding that you are a being that is not the body, that is not the brain. And when you say, okay, my brain is messing up, my brain is telling me all of this stuff, the chemistry in my body, in my mind is off, and it's giving me all of these thoughts. Just even being able to create that tiniest, slightest little bit of distance between you and your emotional state can be so helpful, because when you can just see that one teeny little, just a little fraction of a bit of distance, you can be like, okay, then I know that there's something I could do. Maybe there's something that needs to be fixed here. Maybe there's something physical. Maybe there's something emotional. Maybe the status, the place I'm in my life is not where I should be, and maybe I can make a change, right? So there's all kinds of changes that are possible. So try all of those things, before giving up, before saying, "Well, this is permanent state," right? Because it's not a permanent state, and so many people go through this. So many people in their 20s um, go through a dark period like this. It's very common. It's not typically talked about, but just as common as they call the midlife crisis, right? So the midlife crisis is a time in your life where, most people know about that. Hi, Jay, good to see you. And it corresponds to certain kind of planetary influences with Saturn and in your life. And there is a planetary influence that happens earlier with Saturn, in your 20s, that a lot of people don't recognize that happens. And that's when a lot of people go through deep, dark depression and entertain thoughts of suicide. But recognizing that this is temporary, right? Because it moves. That pressure, that weight on your heart and your soul is not going to exist forever, So I think for a lot of people, recognizing that this is just a passing thing, it's a temporary thing. How are you, Jay? We're talking about a rather serious subject about suicide um, and grief over that. You know, when we lose friends to that. But also, I'm talking about, you know, because my friend was also talking about how she herself had entertained thoughts of that, and so I'm just sharing that this is very common. It's a very common thing that happens oftentimes in your 20s. And then it can happen again later in life. And there are certain kind of planetary influences with Saturn that 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 correlate oftentimes to this, that astrologers have discovered that correlate a lot of times to this. And so recognizing that that's a passing thing, you know, you got to wait it out and let those planets, you know, finish, get through that space, right? And it can take a while. It can take a year or two sometimes for them to move out of that alignment. So, but knowing that there is a light at the end of that tunnel, right? Knowing that there are things you can do to change your space, to change your life. Um, like, isn't that better than giving up on it, right? So, I mean, there's definitely been times where I have gone through really dark times and I've thought, like, well, if this is what it is, if I can't seem to get anywhere and I can't seem to get where I want to be, and I've tried so hard and I'm not creating that the life I want, I have nothing of this life that I've been trying so hard for. I've been through those times in my life, you know, and I'm so glad that, I mean, I didn't entertain those thoughts for long, fortunately, but also, you know, my life is so different now. It's beautiful, and I have so many of the things that were really upsetting me then, they don't exist in my life anymore, right? It's had such a massive transformation in the last 7 years. So, you know, recognizing that that comes, that you don't have to, you know, if you can hold on, it will pass. It does get better, and it may not pass in a day or a week or even a year sometimes, right? Which is really tough. But there's always things you can do. There are people to talk to. There are, you know, to use techniques to get through that period, recognizing it's just a period. It doesn't last forever. It's just a time frame. And we use all kinds of techniques. I mean, using techniques to block it out. You know, some people just become, you know, some people become alcoholics, which is really not the path, because if you get into alcohol and drugs during a time like that, then you're going to make it more likely that you might make the wrong decision under the influence, right? So I think it's really important to stay away from that when you're going through that. But people may use other techniques. You know, I mean, for a long time when I was really upset, I would read novels and watch TV, you know, and just binge watch and let those other emotions from other things come into me to try to manage my own emotions. Now I have better techniques for managing emotions, but I didn't always before. And, you know, and sometimes you just need to do that. Sometimes you just, in that moment, that's what you have to do. You've got to go find something to do. One of the best things to do is to do something with your body, to move, to go out and exercise, to swim, to play tennis, to get out, to force your body to move. And I know that that can be the last thing you feel like doing, right? Absolutely the last thing. What is can be really even more helpful, like if you're in a place where you just like, you know, I mean, there are times I'm just sitting on the couch and I'm like, I'm not moving anywhere, okay? But other times when I've been like that, I'm just like, I have to do it. I will do it. I force myself to get up. I force myself to do something, even though I absolutely don't feel like it. Another great technique is to have like a happy channel on your, you know, whatever that is, Spotify, something like that. Have happy music channel and play that music to yourself when you're just feeling, I mean, because that's something you don't even have to move. You don't even have to move and get off the couch, right? Sometimes you just sit there and you're like, well, I can't do anything, right? You just absolutely don't want to move. Then the least you could do is move your finger and, you know, hit that button and play that happy music channel. Hey, Maribel. Hi, Silva. play the happy music channel to get you that a little bit of that movement, right? To start that little process, because music is one of the most powerful emotional um, I want to say manipulators, but it's incredibly powerful on your emotion, right? This is why I don't listen to sad music. I don't listen to angry music because I know that it fills my body with those emotions. So I listen to music with the emotions of things that I want to feel. So even if you're completely down in the dumps and you feel horrible, just even putting that on, you could just sit there. You don't even have to move off the couch. You just sit there and just listen to it and let that music wash over you. And for a while, right, when you first started, you may be like, and all angry at the music, right? Because it's not what you're feeling inside. But just let it do its work. Let it just play and let it do its work. Yes, music is life. Music is emotion. Um, and it's incredibly powerful. So I know people who have healed themselves from serious illnesses and chronic illnesses just through um, constantly stimulating their positive emotions through music. To just like they just make it a flood on them constantly, where they just immerse themselves in it to the point that they're constantly triggering their positive emotions, which allows their body to heal and it can allow your emotions to heal. Um, Another technique that doctors use, and this is a validated technique that they have done studies for, is as simple as just looking up and smiling. Like just look up at the roof and smile. Look up at the roof and smile for 5 minutes without stopping. Like this is actually a thing that really works because you're changing your physiology, even though you don't feel like it, even though the smile is fake, right? And you're just stretching your lips. Doesn't matter when you do that, when you look up at the roof and you smile, right? You lift your chest up. Just something as tiny as that can help to shift that emotion. And they've done studies with psychologists that say if you do that 3 times a day for people who are in depression and stuff like that, if you do that 3 times a day, it will change your emotion. It actually helps people get out of long term depression by doing that 3 times a day for 5 minutes a day. So these are techniques, these are proven techniques that help us. Manipulate our emotions. They help us shift our emotions because emotions are just that. They're emotions. They're not real. We have this sense that they're real and our emotions are us. And we say things like, I am sad instead of I feel sad. I feel depressed, right? If you say I feel that, then you recognize I am not that. I just feel that. Okay. And then you can say, well, if I feel that, then I can get myself to feel something else. I can change what I feel. And I can do something to change what I feel because I'm in control of what I can do to change what I feel because it isn't me, it's just something I feel, right? And recognizing, when I used to, I learned this actually as a teenager when I would get really angry and stuff about stuff. And my dad told me, he said, I used to lose my temper a lot, which he did. And he realized that maybe he was hungry. So he said, go and just have a snack, eat something. And that was such a powerful realization for me as a young teenager that my emotions, this like huge thing I was feeling, could be addressed, could be modified, could be helped, maybe by just going and having a snack, right? Which meant that it wasn't real. All of this big bubbling emotion, it was something that I could address with something as simple as eating a yogurt, you know, that I could help it to calm down. I could help to, because maybe I have low blood sugar. Um, Good, Jay. I'm glad you're feeling good. That's awesome. I'm happy. Uh, so yeah, so just I'm sharing with you these techniques because there may be either you may need them in your life, or there may be people in your life who need them, and they're so simple. Just like having a happy music, happy channel music on speed dial that you can hit. And just listen to it, or doing that thing, smiling up at the ceiling, doing a power pose, shifting your body posture, even if you don't feel like it, just doing it. anyway, can really shift things. It is proven to help people heal, to help people recover from depression. And that puts the power back in your hands when you feel helpless, when you feel like all is lost, and when you feel powerless. That puts that power back in your hands, and it will at least get you through to a place where you can actually start to think about and make decisions, right? Because when you're in that darkest place, you're not thinking about what's the way out. You're not thinking about what are some helpful things I can do, or how can I change my life to bring me more of what I want. All your mind is just full of that darkness. So the first thing to do is to do something to move it, do something to shift that emotion. Hey, Harshita, good evening. We are talking about some difficult topics. We're talking about suicide and grief and how do we deal with things like this. Hey, Jim. And so I'm sharing that these are some really simple techniques that either you can use when you are feeling upset and depressed, or that you can share with others, with friends, with people you know who are really going through it, to help them understand that their emotions are in their control, that they can do something about them. They may not be able to change them completely, do everything, but they can do something about them. And they can at least do something that can get them through that next hour, that can get them through that day, that can get them through to when they can wake up. And if we can just shift those emotions even a little bit, right, by using the technique I was just saying, smiling up at the ceiling. There's a proven technique that literally psychologists have done studies on, or listening to happy, inspiring, upbeat, positive music, then can at least get us through that darkest period to where we can start to think again, where we can start to plan, where we can start to have options, and we can tell ourselves, what is the option I have? Because if this thing that's happening is making me so miserable, is it something that I just, I got to wait it through, or is there something big that I need to change in my life? Regardless of that, even if you had to change your whole life, it's better than giving up on it, right? Because there's the idea and the vision that you will come through it, even if it takes months, even if it took a year, 2 years, right? What is that compared to the whole rest of your life, and all of the amazing and beautiful things that you could do in that life, and all of the things you could see and experience, right? Those dark periods, they really just last for a period. They just last for a time. When I was a kid, we used to, oh, I gotta go because I'm gonna be late for a call, but I will tell you more later. I hope you have a beautiful day, and I hope that this helps. Re-listen to this and see kind of what is some of the techniques that you can use to help lift your emotions when you're going through that, or to help others do that too. Okay, have a good night, have a good day.